The HOA treasurer, Brenda Whitfield, didn't just trespass. She executed a hostile occupation of my property, aggressively seizing my two-car garage for her $60,000 BMW without a single request for consent. She then immediately followed up by issuing me a bogus, retaliatory fine for the structural violation she caused when my garage door stayed open overnight. I was dragging my physically destroyed body home after a brutal, thankless 12-hour electrical shift, the steel of my work boots grinding venomously on the gravel, and there it was, her pearl-white luxury parasite, dead center and usurping the sacred space where my tools and honest work belonged. The vile stench of her expensive leather was aggressively clashing with the clean, honest smell of my motor oil and sawdust. Before we move forward, comment down from where you're watching right now. The electronic shriek of her car alarm, that smug, arrogant sound, was the final insult. When I coldly demanded she vacate my space, she didn't apologize. She flaunted fake, manufactured emergency parking rules and contemptuously waved me off, ordering me to learn community cooperation. 6 weeks after that initial arrogant act of seizure, I didn't just get my garage back. I owned her house. And she was sobbing uncontrollably into my voicemail, begging me not to foreclose, while the entire terrified neighborhood bore witness to her collapse. But before I unleash the precise, devastating surgical method I used to make her illegal power destroy her financially and professionally, tell me, have you been steamrolled by some pathetic, power-hungry authority figure just because they thought their self-assigned title gave them the right? Drop your location immediately below. I want to see how many of us are done being exploited and aggressively pushed around. My name is Jake Morrison. 2 years ago, I foolishly believed purchasing my first house in Willowbrook Estates was finally hitting the jackpot. I'm a 34-year-old licensed electrician, a single father to 8-year-old Emma, who stays with me every other weekend. 6 years of mercilessly saving every single overtime penny, subsisting on ramen like it was fine dining, all for a modest 3-bedroom with the real, non-negotiable prize, a 2-car garage I could convert into my Fortress Choss workshop. That garage was my sanctuary. It was defined by the powerful, clean smell of sawdust mixing with copper wire, housing my grandfather's weathered, battle-scarred workbench with tools that literally built this country. It was a space designed to engineer Emma's treehouse without some intrusive tyrant measuring my property lines. I'd recently inherited a small, timely sum from Grandpa, too. I finally had the capital for real, strategic home improvements instead of just dreaming about them. The garage door opener had this satisfying hydraulic rumble when it sealed shut each evening, aggressively isolating my world from the toxic suburban theater outside. Willowbrook looked perfect on paper. Middle-class homes, young families, passive retirees. The $180 monthly HOA fee was simply a tax for basic upkeep. The rules were simple, I calculated. Maintain a neat lawn, don't paint your house neon, work hard, and absolutely mind your own damn business. Then I met Brenda Whitfield, and I immediately executed a threat assessment. Simple was never part of her corrupt manifesto. Brenda Whitfield's 52, and she pilots that $160K BMW like a weapon of class warfare, living in the corner McMansion with the circular driveway that aggressively screams, "Bow before my superiority." She's the HOA treasurer, a title that instantly translates in her mind to supreme dictator of suburban perfection. Her husband, Brad, works city planning, a fact she weaponizes in every single conversation like verbal ammunition. Picture this: always perfectly coiffed, designer clothing screaming status, wearing a smile that could make Arctic ice feel warm by comparison. She was the kind of woman who clinically measures your grass height while pretending to exercise her designer purse dog. My first Brenda Whitfield encounter happened 6 months after moving in. I was installing essential safety lighting for elderly Mrs. Chen, helping her feel secure after neighborhood break-ins. Suddenly, a menacing shadow loomed over my work. The sharp click of expensive heels on concrete, an overwhelming, suffocating cloud of perfume that probably cost more than my entire truck payment. "Excuse me." She held her clipboard clutched like divine scripture. "But I don't see permits posted for this electrical work." I explained outdoor lighting didn't need permits, showed my state license, offered to review safety codes. Her response was delivered with a chilling, surgical calm. "I'll need to verify that with my husband, the city planner. We simply cannot have questionable contractors compromising our property values." The way she said, "questionable contractors," like my 12 years of licensed experience and honest, calloused hands, meant absolute zero, because I drove a work truck instead of leasing German luxury. That bitter, metallic taste of being utterly dismissed was my official, toxic welcome to Brenda Whitfield's neighborhood. Over 18 months, she transformed suburban watchdogging into performance tyranny. She conducted dawn patrols with her violation notebook, documenting infractions like children's bikes on driveways or trash cans retrieved 11 minutes late. This woman made HOA enforcement her personal crusade against anyone who actually earned their living. Her special, focused malice was reserved for residents who didn't match her suffocating community vision. Mrs. Chen got cited for aesthetically inappropriate decorations, meaning her late veteran husband's memorial wind chimes. Tom Rodriguez faced crippling fines for parking his work truck in his own driveway because commercial vehicles degrade residential character. The sound of Brenda Whitfield's heels clicking became our neighborhood early warning system. Everyone held their breath, praying she'd pass without stopping to measure something with her little ruler. But that Tuesday evening, when I came home physically destroyed from a 12-hour job, I discovered Brenda Whitfield had unilaterally decided my garage was apparently community property. That was the line. And she had just signed her own death warrant. When that HOA tyrant, Brenda Whitfield, sped away in her aggressively seized BMW, the silence that fell wasn't a truce. It was a cold, absolute cessation of unnecessary noise. The dust from her tires settled, hanging in the air like a toxic chemical haze. I stood there until every particle had surrendered to gravity. My hand was still resting on the signpost that read, "Private Property." No HOA jurisdiction, the metal letters glinting with defiant truth in the hostile sun. They looked small against the vastness of the open ranch lot. But to me, they represented the first honest, certified boundary I'd established in a decade. This ranch purchase wasn't casual. It was a strategic, tactical acquisition. I had spent 3 months hunting for this particular fortress of certified freedom. I wasn't buying scenery or topsoil. I was securing a property based on a single, non-negotiable metric: the absolute, unadulterated absence of external petty control. My last neighborhood had been a masterclass in localized tyranny. Their idea of community was simply a code word for total, suffocating control. They didn't just enforce rules, they weaponized them with malicious intent. You couldn't leave your work truck parked in your own driveway overnight without receiving a formal, threatening warning. My choice of mailbox color, beige instead of the HOA's approved, aggressively taupe palette, earned me a $70 criminal fine. Once I received a violation notice because my trash bin lid didn't seal all the way. It wasn't neglect, it was wind. But the violation stood, accompanied by a penalty. I can still recall sitting at my kitchen table, 3 violation slips spread out like court summons delivered by a petty dictator. That night, the truth landed with the crushing weight of a financial anchor. I was paying monthly dues to people who truly believed courtesy and common sense came with a crippling, toxic price tag. That moment was the pivot point. I started looking for property that was not merely outside their reach, but beyond their legal grasp. Every search was relentless, calculated, and strategically executed. I am an analyst by trade, an electrician whose entire professional life is built on patterns, meticulous data verification, and the cold, hard process of eliminating variables to ensure systems don't fail. I applied that exact federal-grade process to securing my personal peace of mind. I started at the county level, pulling certified records, meticulously verifying boundary lines, and cross-referencing zoning codes. If I could have graphed safety, I would have done it. When I finally located this old ranch lot, it wasn't charming. The fence lines were overgrown, the gate was rusted, and the barn leaned like it was tired of fighting authority. But there was a quiet in the air that felt absolutely earned, not granted. It felt like unconditional sovereignty. The same day, I called a property rights attorney. "No HOA?" I demanded. He let out a dry laugh. "Not even a whisper of one," he confirmed. That was the only validation I needed. 2 weeks after the closing, the reconstruction began. I repainted the barn, but more importantly, I installed my perimeter defense. I installed commercial-grade security cameras, not because I was paranoid, but because I'd learned a critical, necessary lesson. Peace is not a condition. It is a resource you must meticulously record and document in case a predator tries to confiscate it later. My mother called often during those first few weeks. She has a way of turning small talk into sermons. Unsolicited, but often necessary, mandates. "How's the new place?" she asked one morning while I was tightening the last bolt on the heavy-duty gate. "Quiet," I said. "Quiet can be dangerous if you don't know what to do with it," she warned, her voice firm. "I just want a place that's mine," I told her. "No rules, no committees, no one measuring my grass to prove I belong." She gave a soft, knowing chuckle. "Then make sure your peace has a backbone, Donovan. Boundaries aren't fences. They are definitions of respect. Keep yours clear, and keep the receipts." That line became my standing operating procedure. Definitions of respect. Maybe that's why I immediately laminated the certified county survey map. Maybe that's why I bought heavy commercial-grade steel hinges instead of cheap residential ones. Every small decision felt like staking my claim, not just to acreage, but to the inalienable right to live without permission. By the end of the second week, everything worked exactly how a pattern analyst would demand. The gate swung smooth and silent. The intercom buzzed once when I tested it, and the camera light blinked red. Recording. I remember feeling the potency of building something no one else could censor or edit. That morning, when Brenda Whitfield's SUV came screaming up the road, she didn't just break the quiet, she shattered the stillness. The flash of the HOA decal on her windshield, that mark of shame, was the first indication that the toxic arrogance I had fled was now attempting to follow me. Her perfume hit the air like a chemical weapon, followed by her voice, sharp as razor wire. And just like that, the quiet I had so strategically built cracked, signaling the end of my peace and the beginning of her demise. As she drove away, promising fabricated fines and non-existent legal action, I stood there, watching the dust roll over my new fence line like a precursor to absolute war. I didn't shout. I didn't engage in the noise, simply looked at the blinking camera light and realized something that transcended petty property disputes. That sign wasn't just decoration. It was a declaration of war, and I had just recorded the opening volley. What Brenda Whitfield didn't yet realize was that she hadn't just insulted a homeowner. She had attacked a system, a fortress of documented facts. And I was about to apply strategic muscle memory to every piece of criminal fabrication she dared to send my way. She saw an eyesore. I saw a pre-existing condition of her toxic reign that was about to be exposed. The instant I received the email notification, I knew the HOA Tyrant was escalating. It wasn't just a communication. It was a digital declaration of war. The subject line screamed, "Violation notice. Immediate action required from the Meadowbrook Estates HOA board." My property was demonstrably outside their jurisdiction, yet here it was, the official header, the cheap blue logo, and the signature line of President Brenda Whitfield, the Tyrant-in-Chief. The entire message was crafted not as a request for compliance, but as a courtroom transcript wrapped in pure, corrosive intimidation. It began with, "Dear Mr. Pierce, following a routine community inspection, your property has been found in violation of several community standards, including but not limited to," followed by the 7 fabricated claims. They targeted everything. Unauthorized signage visible from the main road, the non-compliant gate color, matte black, not HOA-approved palette, fence height exceeding 4 feet, and even the landscaping below minimum standards. The final aggressive flourish was the demand to correct all violations within 5 business days or face crippling fines of $200 per day, per violation, backed by the explicit threat of legal action. 7 fabricated claims, none of them based on fact, all of them meticulously designed to induce immediate, frantic submission. I didn't succumb to the panic she craved. Documentation wasn't paranoia, it was strategic muscle memory. I took a screenshot of the body of the email, then another, capturing the header, the exact timestamp, and the criminal sender address. I saved both to 3 secure, redundant locations: my laptop, the cloud, and an encrypted external drive. This was not a negotiation. This was the formal initiation of a property crime, and I was meticulously logging the crime scene. My immediate countermove was forwarding the evidence to my attorney. The subject line was succinct and damning. "Received this today. Property confirmed outside HOA jurisdiction per county records. Please advise." By the time the message confirmed delivery, my pulse had settled back into its cold execution rhythm. This wasn't about a single gate. This was about systematically exposing Brenda Whitfield's entire HOA power structure. This woman was not maintaining neighborhood standards. She was feeding a personal toxic addiction to control, disguised as responsibility. I needed to understand the full scope of her toxic reign, because the historical pattern of her abuse of power was the real, crushing weapon. I drafted a reply to her that was surgical, direct, and utterly devoid of emotion. "Mrs. Whitfield, thank you for your message. According to the certified county survey dated April 15th, my property lies outside the Meadowbrook Estates HOA boundary. I've attached the relevant documentation for your records. Best regards, Donovan Pierce." No anger, no sarcasm, just certified paper against noise. I double-checked the certified boundary map attachments 3 times for flawless accuracy, then hit send. The message vanished into the digital ether, sent off to wherever unreasonable authority goes when it finally runs out of ground. The silence that followed was heavy, the sound of a predator recalculating its strike. And the strike came not through official HOA channels, but through the back door. Digital slander and character assassination. Tuesday night, my phone buzzed with a message from an old co-worker who still resided inside that toxic subdivision. "Hey man, I think you should see this." Attached were screenshots from the Meadowbrook Community Watch Facebook group, a breeding ground for toxic solidarity, 3.2K members strong. At the top of the feed was a new post by Brenda Whitfield. Her words were polished, weaponized, designed to immediately turn neighbors into a furious, panicked mob. "A new resident has purchased property adjacent to our community and is refusing to comply with our long-standing neighborhood standards. He has erected an industrial gate, posted aggressive signage, and rejected all reasonable communication. His behavior threatens the visual harmony and property values we've all worked so hard to maintain. The comments immediately piled up like digital stones thrown by an ignorant mob. Unbelievable. People like that ruin good neighborhoods. Sue him until he sells. Typical outsider. No respect. The mob was successfully rallied, throwing accusations without a single fact check, driven entirely by the tyrant's self-serving narrative. I did not post a word in response. Arguing with her online was a strategic failure, like yelling into a Category 5 hurricane, all noise, zero progress. Instead, I opened my laptop and started the Meadowbrook HOA escalation log spreadsheet. Across the top row, I typed headers in bold: date, time, event, evidence, witnesses. Entry 1, April 21st, 9:47 a.m. Verbal confrontation at property line, 6 camera angles recorded. HOA president on site. Entry 2, April 25th, 6:32 a.m. Violation email received. Screenshot and attorney forwarded. 7 fabricated claims. Entry 3, April 25th, 8:17 p.m. Facebook post defaming property owner. 47 comments, 3,200 group members, public slander evidence archive. For each row, I linked the digital screenshots, the video clips, and the certified emails. Everything was labeled, cross-referenced, and time-stamped. The way other people build fences, I built records. She was building a dangerous narrative with cheap, easily disproven lies. I was building a federal-grade case with documented, certified facts. I looked out the window at the dark field separating my land from hers. A single porch light burned in the distance, her house glowing like a warning beacon in the night. I didn't feel rage. I felt a deadly, steady focus because, while she was rallying a panicked mob, I was systematically cataloging her every criminal move. The HOA power structure was built on fear and rumor. My counterstructure was built on truth and legal certification. And in the end, only one structure would survive the inevitable audit. The morning after Brenda Whitfield delivered her digital slander, the counterstrike arrived not from an email, but from a FedEx truck. The driver handed me a thick envelope stamped with the embossed lettering of Clayton and Grayson, attorneys at law. I didn't need to open it to know its content. The paper itself smelled of that sterile, toxic scent of intimidation that lawyers bottle better than perfume. I signed for it, waited until the dust from the tires settled, every action deliberate, before slicing the seal with a utility knife. 3 pages of heavy paper slid out, complete with a gold seal and the title in bold, aggressive lettering. Cease and desist. Immediate compliance required. I read the first line aloud, just to hear how ridiculous the manufactured aggression sounded in the open, quiet air. To Mr. Donovan Pierce, you are hereby instructed to remove all non-compliant structures, signage, and fencing located within the Meadowbrook Estates' jurisdiction. Your refusal to comply has caused measurable aesthetic and financial harm to the community. The threat intensified. Should you fail to act within 10 business days, the HOA reserves the right to pursue damages in the amount of $50,000, $50,000 for property value depreciation, and emotional distress caused to residents. I actually smiled when I read the last part. Emotional distress. That was a new level of desperate fabrication, even for Brenda Whitfield. I sat down at the porch table, grabbed a red pen, and began marking up the letter. This was now less a legal threat, and more a fraudulent report requiring aggressive, technical annotation. The first flaw was circled immediately. Within the Meadowbrook Estates jurisdiction. My note beside it read, Property confirmed outside jurisdiction per county zoning letter dated April 29th. Blatant overreach. The second flaw, measurable financial harm. I circled the entire phrase and wrote, no evidence, no appraisal, no valuation, unsupported claim, The third flaw, legal authority. I underlined the whole paragraph twice. Ceased at boundary line. Overreach established by county denial of expansion, October last year. By the time I was finished, the letter looked like a teacher's worst nightmare. 3 pages of red ink exposing legal. Overreach, all neatly dismantled. I scanned each page, saved the images, and attached them to a new email from my attorney. Subject line, received cease and desist. Analysis, complete. His reply came 5 minutes later. Donovan, this is impressive garbage. Nothing in here holds up. They're bluffing. Want me to reply? I typed back. I'll handle this one myself. Better if it comes from me. Then I started drafting my response. It had to be simple, direct, respectful, but absolutely surgical. Mrs. Whitfield's attorneys, I acknowledge receipt of your correspondence dated May. Please be advised that my property parcel E147 lies wholly outside Meadowbrook Estates jurisdiction, as confirmed by the county zoning administrator on April 29th. Letter attached. Your claims of violation and damages are therefore without legal basis. Any further attempts to enforce HOA regulations upon non-HOA property will be documented and treated as harassment under county ordinance. Respectfully, Donovan Pierce. I attached the county letter, the certified boundary map, and my deed. I printed 2 copies, one for my records, one for mailing. I drove into town, sent it certified mail with return receipt requested, ensuring I had certified, documented proof of their receipt, and dropped another copy off at the sheriff's department for record. No emotion, just cold, unyielding procedure. By the time I got home, the fear that had shadowed me for weeks had thinned out completely, like morning fog burned away by strategic sunlight. I realized I wasn't reacting anymore. I was leading the engagement. People like Brenda Whitfield and her hired lawyers thrive on manufactured noise and mistake intimidation for authority because it works on everyone else. But intimidation only works if you let silence follow it. That night, I filed the marked-up cease and desist letter into my binder, and right behind it, I slid the certified return receipt proof that I had answered on record. Outside, the gate light blinked, steady and patient. Inside, the last trace of fear finally went quiet. Fear lives in silence. I was done being quiet. The next phase of escalation came not from an email, but from an unexpected, crucial ally. It was a Wednesday evening, and the call came from a local number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but some strategic instinct told me to answer. Mr. Pierce? Yes. My name's Russell Abbott. I live in Meadowbrook. I think we need to talk about Brenda Whitfield. His voice carried the kind of absolute fatigue you only get from years of sacrificing peace for sheer survival. He suggested a small coffee shop halfway between my ranch and the subdivision. Neutral ground. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a thick, meticulously organized binder in front of him. He wasn't nervous. He was the quietly broken kind of man. He slid the binder across the table without preamble. I kept everything, he said. The first page was a violation notice from 3 years ago. Tree exceeds height regulation. $200 per day fine until removal. An oak, he said. My grandfather planted it in '78. Brenda Whitfield said it violated HOA sightline standards. I checked, he continued. There's no height restriction for pre-90 trees. Didn't matter. I paid over $3,000 in fines before I finally cut it down. His voice cracked slightly. You know what she said when I sent the removal proof? Thank you for maintaining visual consistency. I kept flipping through the next dozen pages. Printed emails, inspection reports, notices stamped, final warning. Another family fined for a garden hose visible from the street. A retired teacher cited for improper mailbox design. A single mother threatened with foreclosure for parking her car on her own curb during a storm. Every page followed the same toxic pattern: intimidation, escalation, submission. "Most people just paid," Russell said quietly. "Cheaper than fighting. Some moved away. She always buried them in paperwork. She's good at it. She knows the system better than anyone." I turned another page and saw something that stopped me cold. A complaint dated the exact same month Brenda Whitfield had filed her failed, fraudulent boundary expansion request with the county. "You've had this all along?" I asked. "Every document," he affirmed. "She's been doing this for 15 years. She wins because she never meets anyone who fights back with documented facts." He added, "She's targeting you now because you represent what she can't control. You live outside the map she built for herself. That terrifies her." He leaned back, eyes fixed on his coffee cup. "You know what's worse? Her husband is a lawyer. I asked him once, off the record, if the fines were even legal. He told me no, but she doesn't listen to anyone, not even me." That detail landed like a physical blow. She wasn't enforcing order. She was feeding a personal pathology, control disguised as responsibility. I flipped to the final section. Photos. One showed a cracked mailbox with spray paint across it. Rules matter. Another, a garden gnome smashed in two. "She got worse after that," Russell said. "Started posting people's names in the HOA newsletter. Called it accountability reports." I closed the binder slowly. "Why tell me now?" "Because the county called," he said. "Someone filed an official complaint about harassment. They're reopening her old cases. They wanted my documentation, and I gave it to them. But I thought you should have copies too, just in case." He slid a flash drive across the table. "Everything's on here. Dates, letters, witnesses. You're not her first target, Donovan. You're just the first one she picked who knows how to fight on paper." For a long moment, the hum of the espresso machine filled the silence. "Do you think she'll back off now that the county's involved?" Russell shook his head slowly. "People like her don't retreat. They double down. She spent years building a world where she's right and everyone else is wrong. If that illusion breaks, she breaks with it." He picked up his coat. "When she loses control," he said quietly, "she looks for someone to punish." He left, leaving the flash drive glinting under the cafe lights, feeling heavier than it should have. It carried not just plastic and data, but the crushing weight of every person who'd folded under her toxic rules. When I got home, I copied the files into my evidence folder, labeling a new section: Historical Pattern. HOA abuse. Each document slid into place like another brick in a wall of certified truth she couldn't climb over. The storm hadn't hit yet, but now, for the first time, I wasn't standing alone. And when it came, I would be absolutely ready to deliver the final crushing blow. The BMW was still there, a $60,000 certified confession letter squatting in my garage, a constant, abrasive reminder of Brenda Whitfield's toxic arrogance. But the tide was shifting. Derek's revelation changed everything. This was no longer neighborhood drama. This was organized crime disguised as suburban governance. And that meant I needed to think bigger than just getting my property back. I spent Wednesday afternoon assembling what Derek called Team Justice. Though, honestly, it felt more like recruiting for the world's most suburban version of Ocean's 11. First up was Mrs. Chen. I found her tending to the memorial flowers she'd planted around her late veteran husband's wind chimes. The decorations Brenda Whitfield had tried to ban as aesthetically inappropriate. "Mrs. Chen," I said, "how would you feel about helping me expose exactly what Brenda Whitfield has been doing to this neighborhood?" Her weathered hands paused over a rose bush that had been blooming for 40 years. "Jake, I've been keeping records since the day that woman showed up at my door with her clipboard. I was hoping someone would eventually ask." She disappeared into her house and returned with a shoebox full of documentation that would make an FBI forensic accountant weep with joy. Every violation notice, every threatening phone call, every instance Brenda Whitfield had photographed her property without permission. All dated, time-stamped, and cross-referenced with neighborhood events. Military training, she explained with a smile that could have powered the neighborhood. My late husband taught me that documentation beats confrontation every time. Next was Tom Rodriguez. I found him in his driveway, working on the engine of that work truck Brenda Whitfield had tried to get towed. The sharp smell of motor oil and unyielding determination filled the evening air. Tom, I need someone with your kind of practical security expertise. He looked up from under the hood, wiping his hands on a rag that had seen more honest work than Brenda Whitfield's BMW. You mean someone who knows how to install surveillance equipment without leaving fingerprints? I mean someone who understands how to document things properly. Tom's grin could have lit up the whole street. Brother, I've been waiting for this conversation since the day she tried to fine me for parking my own truck in my own driveway. Over the next hour, Tom explained his background in military intelligence, how he'd been quietly mapping Brenda Whitfield's patrol patterns, recording her violation schedule, and documenting which houses she photographed and when. Turns out having a combat veteran with surveillance training living 2 streets over was like having a neighborhood guardian angel with a security clearance. Sarah Mitchell joined our impromptu war council with the kind of organizational skills that come from managing 33rd graders every day. I've been running the neighborhood Facebook group like an intelligence operation, she said, pulling up spreadsheets that would impress a data analyst. Every complaint about Brenda Whitfield, every suspicious HOA activity, all categorized. Derek arrived with the final, lethal piece of the legal strategy. We're going to use your vacation time, he announced. I stared at him like he'd suggested I take up professional alligator wrestling. Think about it, Derek pressed. Narcissistic personalities like Brenda Whitfield need constant control. They can't handle situations they can't manipulate. What happens if you just disappear for 4 weeks? The plan was elegantly simple. I'd take my accumulated vacation time and go camping with Emma, completely off the grid. No cell service, no internet, no way for Brenda Whitfield to contact or manipulate me. Meanwhile, Tom would house-sit and document every single thing Brenda Whitfield did. Mrs. Chen would coordinate the neighborhood documentation, and Sarah would monitor the social media meltdown. Without you there to react to, Derek explained. She'll have to show her true, desperate colors to everyone else. Narcissists can't help themselves when they think they're winning. The taste of anticipation was like the first bite of perfectly grilled barbecue. This was going to be satisfying in ways Brenda Whitfield couldn't even imagine. Day 3 of our Yellowstone camping trip, and my satellite emergency communicator buzzed with a chilling message from Tom. Quote, "She's lost her mind. Call when you can get signal." End quote. I hiked to higher ground, wondering what fresh criminal hell Brenda Whitfield had unleashed. Tom answered on the first ring. Jake, brother, this woman is unhinged. Day 1, she tried to get into your garage at 6 a.m. with a crowbar. Day 2, she called a locksmith, claimed it was an HOA emergency inspection for electrical hazards. Locksmith took one look at her fraudulent story and left. But here's the good part. I got it all on video. Tom had positioned military-grade surveillance cameras to cover every angle of my property, uploading to cloud storage that Brenda Whitfield couldn't tamper with. Day 3, she brought City Electrical, Inspector Frank Morrison, told him you had dangerous wiring that needed immediate inspection. Tom was a master of his craft. He knew every inspector. Frank took one look at her story and asked for her electrical license number when she claimed she was the one reporting the hazard. Frank told her that filing false electrical emergency reports was a misdemeanor. Then he left, but not before giving me his card. But Jake, that's not even the worst part. Tom's voice dropped to that tone military guys use when describing something spectacularly idiotic. Last night around midnight, she tried to jimmy your garage lock with what looked like a butter knife. I confronted her, and she claimed she heard strange noises and was investigating community safety concerns. Brother, I got her on camera attempting breaking and entering while explaining to a Marine veteran how community safety works. Tom had filed a police report for attempted burglary. Brenda Whitfield's response to getting caught red-handed was even more revealing. She posted on the neighborhood Facebook group at 2 a.m., quote, "Some residents think vacation planning is more important than community safety." End quote. Sarah Mitchell had screenshot everything before Brenda Whitfield could delete it. The 2 a.m. timestamp, immediately following her caught attempt to break in, was a certified confession. "The neighbors are turning against her," Tom continued. "Mrs. Patterson from Oak Street commented that maybe people who break into garages at midnight aren't the best judges of community safety. Got 47 likes in 6 hours. Derek had called that morning with updates from the legal front. The State Real Estate Board had fast-tracked their investigation after receiving Mrs. Chen's meticulous documentation. Brad's city position was now under active review by the Ethics Committee. "One more thing," Tom said, dropping the final bombshell. "She tried to bribe me yesterday, $500 cash just to let her into your garage for 1 hour to retrieve important staging materials. I told her those staging materials looked suspiciously like your electrical tools." Tom had recorded the entire conversation, including Brenda Whitfield's exact words about making my city permit applications much easier if we cooperate. Day 9 of our camping trip, and my communicator buzzed again. This time it was Sarah's number with an urgent, chilling message. Quote, "Emergency. Brenda hired someone to break in. Police involved. Call ASAP." End quote. I helped Emma release her rainbow trout back into the stream. The irony immense. We were practicing catch and release while Brenda Whitfield was escalating to actual documented crime. Sarah answered before the first ring finished. "Jake, she's completely lost it. Yesterday she approached Tom with a briefcase full of cash. Today she hired what can only be described as the world's worst burglar. Around 2 p.m., Tom spotted some guy with bolt cutters trying to cut my garage. Lock. When confronted, the guy claimed to be a licensed contractor working for the HOA, but only produced a handwritten note on Brenda Whitfield's personal letterhead. Tom called the police. Officer Martinez arrived to find a man with no identification attempting to break into private property. When pressed, the burglar immediately gave up Brenda Whitfield's name and phone number. "Gets better," Sarah continued. Under questioning, he admitted Brenda Whitfield paid him $200 cash to retrieve staging materials from a garage that needed to be accessed for community safety. The criminal conspiracy charges were stacking up faster than Emma's collection of interesting rocks. Attempted burglary, conspiracy to commit breaking and entering, and now soliciting criminal activity. "But Jake, the nuclear bomb dropped this morning." Sarah's voice had that tone teachers get when describing a spectacular classroom disaster. The State Attorney General's office executed a search warrant on Brenda Whitfield's house and real estate office at 6 a.m., with news cameras rolling. I sat down on a fallen log, trying to process the fact that my HOA drama had escalated to federal law enforcement. "Channel 7 was there for the whole thing," Sarah said. "Brenda Whitfield in her bathrobe screaming about property rights while they carried out boxes of financial records. Brad getting arrested in his city planning office while his co-workers watched through conference room windows. They found everything. Computer files showing the property manipulation scheme, bank records proving she'd been moving HOA funds through her personal accounts, even a damning spreadsheet listing target homeowners with notes about pressure points for maximum compliance. Mrs. Chen's name was on that list with notes about elderly widow vulnerable to safety concerns. My file was the most detailed. Single father, electrician, corner lot, high development potential, financial pressure through daughter's needs. The casual racism and classism documented in Brenda Whitfield's own handwriting made the civil rights case slam dunk simple. This wasn't just Willowbrook. This was organized crime using suburban homeowner associations as cover. And then Sarah delivered the final, chilling update. Jake, Brenda Whitfield called you 17 times yesterday. The voicemails, there's something special. Started demanding, moved to pleading, ended with full sobbing breakdown. She's begging you not to press charges, offering to drop all HOA claims, even promising to buy your house for above market value if you'll just make this all go away. The mountain lake was mirror smooth, reflecting Emma's delighted face as her stone skipped 7 times before sinking. Pure joy in a place where the air was clean and people couldn't lie about fake parking regulations. Sarah, I said, save those voicemails. I have a feeling they're going to be very useful when we get home. The strategic vacation was over. In 3 days, Emma and I would be heading back to Willowbrook, where a federal investigation was waiting for us, and where Brenda Whitfield's empire had finally collapsed under the crushing weight of its own corruption. Day 14. Homecoming Day. Emma and I drove back into Willowbrook Estates to find our quiet suburban street transformed into an actual major news event. The scene was a cross between a media circus and a block party. 3 news vans lined the curb, their satellite dishes aimed like weapons. Neighbors stood in anxious clusters, talking and pointing. And there, in the middle of it all, was my house, with police tape still fluttering around the relic of Brenda Whitfield's abandoned BMW. "Daddy, why are there so many people?" Emma asked, pressing her face to the car window. "Because sometimes, sweetheart, when you stand up to bullies, other people pay attention," I replied, pulling into the driveway. Tom met us with a grin that could have powered the neighborhood, and a folder thick enough to use as a weapon. "Welcome home, brother. Hope you're ready for your close-up," he said, handing me the folder while Emma ran to inspect her treehouse in progress. The documentation inside was beautiful in its damning simplicity. 17 attempts at breaking into my garage, 3 police reports, 1 arrest, and enough security footage to make a feature-length crime documentary. "Channel 7 wants to interview you in an hour," Tom said. "Something about the homeowner who exposed HOA corruption through strategic vacation planning." The interview setup was strategically placed in Mrs. Chen's front yard, giving the cameras a clear shot of Brenda Whitfield's BMW still sitting in my garage. A $40,000 confession letter. 2 weeks of abandonment had not been kind to the German luxury engineering. Detective Sarah Rodriguez, a professional, no-nonsense officer who was clearly enjoying the fact that a civilian had handed her a federal conspiracy case with a bow on top, arrived first to walk me through the criminal timeline. "Mr. Morrison, your strategic documentation and the evidence gathered by your neighbors has resulted in charges against 14 individuals across 6 counties. This is the largest HOA fraud case in state history," she stated, her voice grim. She explained how the investigation had exploded beyond Brenda Whitfield and Brad. The property manipulation scheme involved city planners, real estate agents, mortgage brokers, and HOA board members working together to systematically defraud homeowners. "Your garage situation was small potatoes compared to what we found, but it was the thread that unraveled everything," she confirmed. At 5:12 p.m., neighbors started gathering for what Sarah Mitchell had organized as a community accountability meeting. The Willowbrook Elementary cafeteria, the same place Brenda Whitfield had held her pathetic emergency board meeting, was now packed with 47 families, local media, and enough righteous anger to power a small city. Derek arrived with updates that sounded like something straight out of a legal thriller. Brenda Whitfield's real estate license had been permanently revoked. Brad had been terminated from city planning, and banned from municipal employment. Their house was already in foreclosure, and both were facing federal fraud charges with potential 20-year sentences. "But here's the beautiful part," Derek said, addressing the tense crowd. "The civil settlement includes funding for a community legal defense fund. Any homeowner who faces HOA harassment can get free legal consultation." The applause was thunderous. Mrs. Chen stood up with tears in her eyes, holding a framed photo of her late husband. "My Henry served 3 tours defending democracy. He would have loved seeing it work right here in our neighborhood," she declared. Tom Rodriguez took the microphone next. His military bearing commanded instant respect. "What Jake did wasn't just stand up for himself. He stood up for all of us. Every working family who's been told we don't belong in our own neighborhoods," he announced. The ultimate mic drop moment came next. Derek confirmed that he was about to play the evidence that directly led to the criminal arrests. He played the 17 voicemails Brenda Whitfield had left me, piping them through the community speakers. It was a horrifying progression spanning 2 weeks, starting with demands. "You need to return immediately and resolve this garage situation." Escalating to threats. "My husband's position gives us options you haven't considered." Moving to desperate bargaining. "I'll drop all HOA violations if you just let me explain." The gasps from the audience were audible when they heard her admission of attempted bribery. "I'll pay above market value for your house. Just don't let them take everything." The sound of her complete, sobbing breakdown was devastating. But the moment that truly brought the house down was her final, self-pitying message, recorded at 3 a.m. on day 12th. Quote, "I never meant for it to go this far. I just wanted to control something. Everything's falling apart, and I thought if I could just make the neighborhood perfect, maybe Brad would stop drinking and we could save our marriage and I could stop feeling like such a failure." End quote. The raw desperation in her voice was almost tragic. Almost. It exposed the true pathology, control as a coping mechanism, but weaponized against innocent people. Officer Martinez stood up from the back of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, justice isn't always pretty, but it's necessary. This woman used her HOA title as a license to commit systematic fraud, targeting the elderly and the working class. That ends today," he stated firmly. The criminal charges were not merely property disputes. They were federal civil rights violations stemming from the casual racism and classism documented in Brenda Whitfield's own handwriting on that spreadsheet. The meeting wasn't about revenge. It was about the restoration of certified justice. Channel 7's reporter asked me for a final comment. With 47 neighbors watching, cameras rolling, and my daughter building block towers in the back of the room, I said the only thing that mattered. All I wanted was to use my own garage. Turns out that sometimes defending small things leads to protecting big things, like the right to exist in your own neighborhood without someone else's permission. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Emma clapped so hard her little hands turned red. The message was clear. Brenda Whitfield had lost the community, her career, her financial stability, and now her freedom. Karma, as it turns out, is very expensive and doesn't take vacation days. The total collapse of the HOA's toxic structure was immediate and irreversible. 6 months after the federal warrants were served and Brenda Whitfield was arrested, Emma's treehouse was finally finished. We built it exactly 18 inches past where Brenda Whitfield had fraudulently claimed my property line ended. Because when you own the land, you might as well use every inch of your certified freedom. Emma was hanging upside down from her new rope ladder, her hair swinging like a pendulum, while she explained the treehouse rules to her friend Madison from down the street. "First rule," she announced with the unshakable authority of an 8-year-old architect. "No mean people allowed. Second rule, everyone has to share snacks. Third rule, if you're mean to someone's daddy, you can't come up here ever." Smart kid. She'd learned more about property rights and community justice from this whole experience than most adults understand. The civil lawsuit settlement had been finalized last week. $12,000 plus legal fees was paid out of the insurance policy that covered HOA board misconduct. Derek had been right about individual liability. Board members who operate outside their certified authority become personally and criminally responsible for damages. But I didn't keep the money. Instead, I used it to establish the Willowbrook Property Rights Defense Fund. $12,000 in seed money, plus Derek volunteering pro bono hours, plus Mrs. Chen serving as community ombudsman for elderly residents. Any homeowner facing HOA harassment could get free legal consultation and representation. The fund helped 3 families in the first month alone. Turns out Brenda Whitfield's predatory methods had been copied by power-hungry board members in other neighborhoods. But now word was spreading. Mess with working families, and there are people who know how to fight back with facts and legal precision. Mrs. Chen had become something of a neighborhood celebrity. Her documentation methods were so meticulously thorough that 2 other counties asked her to train their residents in proper record-keeping for HOA accountability. She started calling it her Democracy in Action Workshop. Tom Rodriguez got elected to the new HOA board on a platform of transparency and common sense. First order of business was posting all financial records online for public review. Second was establishing a policy that board members couldn't profit from their positions in any way. Property values in Willowbrook had actually increased 8% since the corruption was exposed. Turns out people pay premium prices for neighborhoods where you don't have to worry about arbitrary harassment from petty dictators. Sarah Mitchell started a YouTube channel called HOA Accountability Network, teaching homeowners how to research their rights, document violations, and build coalitions for community protection. Her subscriber count hit 50,000 last month, turning neighborhood gossip into strategic intelligence. Derek's law practice got so many HOA corruption cases that he hired 2 associates and started specializing in homeowner protection law. He jokes that my garage situation was the best marketing campaign he never paid for. Emma's relationship with me had grown stronger through the whole experience. She'd learned that sometimes adults need to stand up to bullies too, and that doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. "Daddy," she said one evening while we were grilling burgers in the backyard, "are you proud of what we did?" "I'm proud of what you did, sweetheart. You were patient while Daddy learned how to be brave," I told her. "Can we go camping again this summer?" "Absolutely, but this time just for fun." The annual Garage Door Day barbecue had become a neighborhood tradition. Every August, we celebrate the day ordinary people proved that corrupt authority doesn't get the last word. Kids draw chalk art about brave neighbors. Adults share property improvement projects without fear. And everyone remembers that democracy works best when citizens pay attention. Brenda Whitfield and Brad both plead guilty to federal fraud charges. She got 18 months in minimum security prison. He got 2 years and a permanent ban from government employment. Their house sold at auction for 60% of its previous value. Karma, as it turns out, is very expensive. But here's the thing I want you to remember. This story started with one woman aggressively seizing one man's garage without permission. It ended with federal investigations, criminal convictions, and protection for hundreds of families across multiple counties. Sometimes the biggest, most necessary changes start with defending the smallest spaces. So, here's my challenge for you. Share your own HOA nightmare story immediately in the comments. You never know who might need to hear that they're not alone in fighting back against petty tyrants who think badges give them the right to run other people's lives. And subscribe and ring that bell because next week I'm telling you about the time a city inspector tried to condemn someone's house for having too many books, and how one librarian fought back with a law nobody knew existed. Because bullies only win when good people stay quiet. And Emma's treehouse rules still apply. No mean people allowed.